That is not an Artemi Panarin trade. Earlier this morning, and literally like 30 minutes ago, it was announced that forward Nick Bjugstad has gotten traded from the St. Louis Blues to the New Jersey Devils for a mid-round pick and a prospect. Well, after some more reporting, first to report, by the way, Jordan Schmaltz from the St. Louis beat, turns out the Devils are getting Bjugstad from the Blues in exchange for a mid-round pick and an AHL player. Bjugstad, 33, has another year left in his deal next season at a $1.75 million cap hit. Here are the confirmed details per Frank Saravalli, and then, of course, via the New Jersey Devils themselves. The Devils have acquired Nick Bjugstad from the St. Louis Blues for forward Thomas Bordeleau and a conditional 2026 fourth-round pick. That's the trade, and the condition on the pick is that it will be the later of Dallas or Winnipeg's fourth. Pretty simple trade, but honestly, not really a trade that I think we saw coming out of the New Jersey Devils. First and foremost, Thomas Bordeleau, the prospect that's going over to St. Louis here, is a pretty interesting name, 24 years old. He's actually a lot older than I thought he was. I always remembered Bordeleau as one of these really skilled NTDP guys from the early 2020s. Yeah, turns out he was drafted 38th overall back in 2020, and he hasn't really found himself a way to break out into the NHL. Sure, he had that 1 year with the Sharks back in 23-24, but other than that, it's been mostly AHL hockey for Thomas Bordeleau after being such a productive NCAA player. But heading over to the New Jersey Devils is Nick Bjugstad, 33 years old, and a guy who is going over to a New Jersey team that is just sinking and sinking the further we go on into this season. We just made a video about it, but Devils fans are pretty ticked off at Jack Hughes right now for the way that he has conducted himself in interviews and the lack of production. Well, guess what? Jack Hughes, it was already announced earlier this morning he's not going to play tomorrow, so Nick Bjugstad seems like he's the next best option for this team. Center right wing, a guy who is particularly noted for his size. He's huge, 6'6", 205, and he was primarily noted as a pretty solid two-way force back in his days with the Florida Panthers. He was a 49-point guy once upon a time, and inevitably he took some years with other organizations, didn't produce as much, but he then was a 45-point player with Arizona a few years later. This season, he had scored 7 points in 35 St. Louis Blues games. Things really just didn't work out for Nick Bjugstad with St. Louis, but that's okay because it's St. Louis. They kind of stink, and so a lot of people aren't really doing all too well in that organization. The Blues, of course, they had signed Bjugstad to a 2-year contract in free agency earlier last year. $3.5 million total contract over 2 years, so a $1.75 million AAV. The once 40-point scorer is now a decently cheap bottom six caliber forward who can probably provide some nice two-way play and stability to the Jersey Devils. And for the very low price of Thomas Bordeleau and a fourth-round pick, you can see this trade go through. Now, Bordeleau, I actually did think that he had a lot more potential when he was draft eligible. I know he was taken a little bit late, second-round guy back in 2020, but I mean, the scouting report says it all here. While clocking in at just 5'9", Bordeleau uses exceptional speed and puck protection habits to make an impact in the offensive zone. He is at his best carrying the puck on the perimeter, scanning defense, and waiting for a passing opportunity to open up, and striking with extreme precision to a waiting teammate. This is a guy who, if you take a look at the 2020 Elite Prospects Draft Guide, you will see some pretty good things out of him. He was a A-grade prospect, and he was ranked as a 5+ on most categories here. There were a lot of really positive elements to Bordeleau in his game. He was very skilled, despite the fact that he wasn't really, and still isn't really, that big. Bordeleau had some really nifty hands and a really nice set of feet to go under him as well. Former San Jose prospect, he got sent over to the New Jersey Devils in, what was that trade? He wasn't a free agent, that's not how it went down. San Jose Sharks over to New Jersey, that was earlier last year, July 1st. It was the Bordeleau for Shane Bowers trade. That's what it was. 1-for-1. Shane Bowers, big trivia piece there. He was part of a really big trade a few years ago. Was it not like Colorado? The Andrew Hammond trade? Something crazy like that. But anyways, Thomas Bordeleau, he's a guy who, if you asked me back in 2020 what I thought of this dude, I thought he'd be a middle six, power play second person who would be able to use very nice puck skills and 10-2 edges to be able to create offense at the NHL level. This year, he only has 8 points in 35 AHL games with the Utica Comets, so it just wasn't working out for him in the Devils organization. He had some decently productive years with the San Jose Barracuda, and then, of course, that Sharks year that he had. 11 points in 27 games. He was decently productive in that season, too. I do think that the St. Louis Blues are getting a nice prospect here, and we have seen with the Blues over the past few months, they like to take these reclamation projects. They're not afraid to give guys second chances. Especially nowadays with how bad the team is, it's like, yeah, well, they kind of have no choice. They got to see what works, got to see what's available, see what's on the market. They took Jonathan Berggren. He's decently productive. They tried it out with Jakub Vrana. Forget the fact that they've been trying this experiment with former Red Wings, most of all, but the Blues are not afraid to take some of these younger dudes and give them a little bit more of a showcase. That seems to be their game plan in the second half of this season, and Nick Bjugstad wasn't really working out for them either, so this trade pretty much makes sense from that perspective. Oh, big shout out over to Goonie12. Thank you for the subscription. It's been a while since we've seen one of these pop up on our Streamlabs, but I really appreciate that, my friend. Let's go out there and read what some Devils fans are going out there and saying. Oh, Nick Bjugstad is a slow skater. Grant Mulvey goes out there and says, why bother? How about trading a second-round pick for 2 pairs of balls and give them to the Hugheses? Okay, that's pretty opinionated there, eh? Too little, too late. Should have gotten Bjugstad years ago, though. Cool. Is he bringing some points from the Blues with him? Because if not, the season's already over anyway. Reliable bottom 6 center. Worth his money. This is exactly what I was talking about. The Devils are so far down in the standings. I don't really see why trading for Nick Bjugstad makes sense unless they're really just saying, okay, well, let's lock and load for next season. Let's go out there and try to get a guy who could help us out in the bottom 6 next year because he's signed on till next year too. It's not like Nick Bjugstad is going to be the difference maker between between New Jersey making the playoffs or missing out. He's not going to be that important. But ultimately, Devils fans are going to go out there and say their praises here for what exactly they should have done earlier. Eternity too late, but it's a great trade. Do you think the championship DVD will be available in Blu-ray? Yeah, they're getting really sarcastic in the comments section below. But with all that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about this Devils and Blues trade? Nick Bjugstad over to the Devils, Bordeleau and a 4th-round pick over to the St. Louis Blues. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.